Hi there, this is Holly with what I think is going to be called Dancing with Divergence. I'm in the process of starting a YouTube video or YouTube channel, and I'm trying to think of a name to call my channel. So if you have any ideas, feel free to share them. But I'm thinking about calling it Dancing with Divergence, or Dancing with Neurodivergence, just because any of us who are neurodivergent know. It requires a fair amount of skill to be able to get through a day. And so I happen to be a therapist by day, so I have a private practice in Colorado called Outpost Counseling. But in this setting, in this context, though, uh, I might, utilize my background. I've been a therapist for 24 years. My primary goal is actually just to be a neurodivergent human, communicating with other neurodivergent humans. And sort of in the gray, I don't know if I want to say gray, but just sort of in like the lived experience of how it really is. And so in therapy, I was talking with my husband about this yesterday. As a therapist, certainly, like, the primary intention in therapy is to not make therapy about you as the therapist, right? So, my my self-disclosure, I do use it because I think it helps folks most of the time. If it's used like kind of with thoughtfulness and is primarily about what is going to actually help the client. But it's a bit more measured, right? And I'm also what's called a transforming touch practitioner. And that means that I've been trained, I'm trained as a somatic experiencing therapist, which is one modality of kind of more body-based approaches to healing. I'm also trained as a transforming touch practitioner. And in that role, we actually use touch to help people find regulation within their nervous systems. Anyways, I'm a typical, my neurodivergence is emerging, so I'm getting off track a little bit. So I'm just sort of giving you that context. But in this setting, something I've always cared about, like literally probably at least since college, um, maybe college. I'd have to really reflect on that. But it's like removing unnecessary barriers, right? So, the professional role of therapist is actually very important, because the intention is to make sure that clients are safe. And so states put policies and rules in place to govern licensed therapists so that like clients aren't exploited and clients aren't taken advantage of or clients aren't harmed. That's the intention, right? But there's another side to that in that, like, then what you have is this role, the role of a therapist, a professional defined role as a therapist that creates safety, but also I think sometimes creates a barrier that I think, for those of us who've been met by systems and the dynamics of power, can actually kind of be hard, like especially for neurodivergent people, because we already feel othered. I think many of us already feel othered, and we don't fit in the systems very well, right? Like, kind of by definition, we might be aware of the systems. We might not be always able to respond well to the systems, or not by, I don't want to say well, because that suggests that we're doing something wrong. There's just not a good fit between like a neurodivergent soul or person and the systems that are there that are intended to protect, but create this barrier that I think is sometimes hard for neurodivergent humans. Like, I know, at least from my own lived experience, I just want to be met. And when I experience another human, it is just such a lovely experience when, in meeting that other human, I can feel a part of them that is either that might be feeling a part of me, if that makes sense, or when I see how they express themselves in an authentic, less masked way, I'm like, oh, I know that. Like, I know that because I have that inside of me. And so the intention with dancing with divergence is understanding that neurodivergence is actually very dynamic and in a way fluid, even though at times we might feel very stuck in our patterns in some ways. We are, if anything, always in motion internally, whether that's in quiet ways or more expressive ways. Our nervous systems are moving, and dancing has to do with movement. And I think that the skillfulness of learning how to like kind of relate to our nervous systems has that kind of dynamic of like a tango or Argentine tango, right? Where we have to learn how to like not step on our own toes metaphorically and get our and not get in our own way. And we have to learn how to work with kind of the fluidness and even the stuckness at times, but like the fluidness of our nervous systems, even if the fluidness in any given moment is we're feeling really stuck. I know that might not make sense, but there is that dynamic, right, of either being very stuck, like we might be stuck in a special interest where we're not able to get out of for a while because we're just hyper focusing. And yet how do we dance with that part of us, right? How do we learn to be in relationship with that part of us that's feeling overwhelmed, and, as an example, and is going to a special interest to just feel like, leave me alone and like leave me with my special interest. Like, how do we learn to be with those parts? I think that's the dancing part that I'm talking about. And that's thus the idea of dancing with divergence because it's very alliterative, or dancing with neurodivergence because I'm not probably, well, we might address different aspects like, gender, culture, and all. Divergence is divergence, right? But really, I want to focus on how it is for a human that isn't fitting like traditional norms. Like how do we learn to be with ourselves? How do we learn to be in relationship with ourselves? And how do we learn to be in kind of in relationship with the world around us, where frankly I know we have some significant things to offer. Not that we are required to. We have value in our own, in just our existence. Um, but in a world where it's like kind of hard, I think sometimes kind of hard to find pathways to presence and pathways to just being able to show up in a world that isn't always able to understand who we are, what we're about. So, wow. I was actually planning on talking about something else, but I guess this is my introduction to dancing with divergence is that um, I hope that with divergence is a place where we can learn to move together, um, kind of with fluidness and in a metaphorical musicality and with a sense of rhythm, so that yeah, so that life is just a little bit easier. Um, yeah. I think we'd all deserve for life to be a little bit easier. And I know that for myself and for many of you, life has not been easy, sort of by definition. So I guess I'm going to end there. I guess this is my introduction to Dancing with Divergence. I guess I've decided on my topic or what I'm going to call my YouTube videos and my YouTube channel. So um, hmm. So I'm going to take a moment to say I hope you will take very good care of yourself today. And I know life is not always easy. Um, but you are worthy of care and kindness and presence. So I'll end on that. Okay? Take care.